Late autumn, Montana Territory, 1881. The land had already decided winter would come early. Cold swept down from the northern ridges, sharp as a blade, carrying with it the smell of iron clouds and dying grass. The cottonwoods along the creek rattled their yellow leaves like bones, and dust lifted from the prairie floor in pale spirals that vanished as quickly as they formed. On a low rise overlooking the valley, a man sat astride a dark bay horse. Ethan Rowe did not move. His coat shifted in the wind, long and worn thin at the elbows. His hat sat low, shadowing eyes that had learned the cost of looking too long at anything that could be lost. He had been gone nearly a year, 11 months of freight runs, saloons that smelled of cheap whiskey, and nights spent staring at ceilings, hoping distance might dull memory. It hadn't. Below him, near a dry bend in the creek, a woman struggled with broken boards. Lydia Hale. Widow. Alone. She was small-framed, wrapped in a faded gray dress patched too many times to count. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing wrists wrapped in torn cloth. She lifted a warped plank, pressed it into place against a leaning post, and swung her hammer. The nail bent. She struck again. The board split clean down the grain with a sharp crack. Lydia froze for half a breath. Then she dropped the ruined plank, picked up another, and tried again. Ethan's jaw tightened. The lumber was scavenged, rotted, weather-stained scraps pulled from the collapsed stable behind the old Hale place. It wasn't shelter. It was desperation nailed together with hope that wouldn't last the night. He knew that sky. Low. Heavy. Bruised with cold. A storm was coming, not gentle rain, the kind that turned ground to iron and breath to smoke. Lydia braced a post with her shoulder and tried to hammer one-handed. The wind rose suddenly, screaming down the valley like a warning no one asked for. The half-built lean-to shuddered. A top beam rattled loose. Lydia cried out, not in fear but strain, and threw her weight into the frame, boots sliding in the dirt as the wind shoved harder. Ethan's horse shifted beneath him. His hands tightened on the reins. For months he had told himself he would not return. That she hated him. That his presence would only reopen wounds better left sealed. But watching her fight the wind alone did something sharp and unforgiving to his chest. The gust passed. The structure held, barely. Lydia stood shaking, hair torn loose from its pins, breath shallow. Then she reached down for another board. Ethan closed his eyes. That kind of stubbornness killed people out here. He turned his horse away from the ridge and took the long route through the cottonwoods, keeping himself hidden. The Rowe homestead sat quiet and half forgotten. The house sagged. The porch leaned like a tired man. But the barn still stood, gray and weathered, holding the ghosts of two brothers who once believed they would grow old here. Inside, dust floated in the thin light. Ethan climbed into the loft. Good boards lay stacked where his brother had left them the winter before. Straight pine planks, seasoned and strong. There was a canvas tarp, heavy and oiled. A tin of clean nails. A real hammer. Then he saw it, folded neatly atop a crate, a dark blue wool shawl. His brother's wife used to wear it on nights when frost crept into the bones. Ethan's hand hovered. It's not mine to give, but pride wouldn't keep her alive. He packed everything carefully, checked every knot twice, and rode back as the light began to fail. By the time he returned, dusk had settled low. The shelter still stood, but only because Lydia was holding it together with her own body. A brace had failed. She pressed her shoulder into the corner joint, arm trembling as she tried to nail another plank across the gap. She didn't hear him. The frame groaned. Then it gave. Ethan dropped the reins and ran. The collapse came fast. Wood cracked. Boards tilted. Lydia cried out. Ethan reached her just as the top beam snapped free. He threw himself between her and the falling lumber, shoulder first. They hit the ground hard. Dust exploded around them. For a moment, there was only ringing silence. Lydia pushed herself up, gasping, then froze. Ethan lay beside her, breath tight, pain burning through his shoulder. Their eyes met. Shock. Fury. Something wounded and sharp. "You," she whispered. His voice came rough. "You shouldn't be alone out here." Her expression hardened. "What are you doing here?" He stood slowly, brushing dirt from his coat, and stepped back to give her space. "You weren't at the burial," she said, voice shaking now. "Not once. Not a letter. And now you show up like a ghost?" Ethan turned to his horse, untied the canvas bundle, and set it down near the wrecked shelter. He opened it. Good boards. Clean nails. A proper hammer. A tarp folded thick and ready. "These," he said quietly, "will hold through the night." Lydia stared. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was exhaustion. "I'll help rebuild," Ethan said. "Then I'll go." She searched his face like someone weighing a weapon. Finally, stiff, slow, she nodded. Morning arrived quietly, the way it always does after a night that tries to break you. The prairie lay washed clean, damp earth dark and shining beneath a pale sky. Low mist clung to the creek bed, drifting like breath over water gone still. The cottonwoods no longer rattled in warning. Their leaves stirred softly, as if unsure whether the storm had truly passed. Lydia stepped out from beneath the shelter first. Her boots sank slightly into the wet ground. The shawl hung heavy on her shoulders, darkened with rain and dew, but warm. She pulled it tighter, not against the cold, but against the weight of thought pressing in now that there was space to feel it. The shelter stood, not perfect, not pretty, but standing. 4 walls angled just right, a sloped roof tight beneath the tarp, braces firm. The boards creaked when the wind touched them, but they did not bend. They did not give. She raised a hand and rested it against the nearest beam, solid. For the first time in months, something she had built had not fallen apart. Behind her, Ethan emerged more slowly. He moved with the careful stiffness of a man who had pushed his body past sense. One arm was bound in the strip she had torn from the shawl during the storm, the fabric dark where blood had soaked through before drying stiff. "You should be resting," Lydia said without turning. "So should you." She glanced at him then. His face was lined with exhaustion, dirt still clinging beneath his eyes, hair flattened by rain and sleep. Yet there was something steadier in him now, something less hunted. They stood side by side, looking at the shelter. "You did good work," he said quietly. "So did you." The words surprised her. Praise had been in short supply since the funeral. Most people looked at her as if she were fragile glass, or something faintly indecent. Ethan looked at her as if she were capable. "I won't stay long," he said after a moment. "Just until you're properly set." Lydia nodded, though a small knot tightened in her chest. They worked again that morning, reinforcing the weak points, digging a shallow trench to guide runoff away from the wall. The sun climbed slowly, pale and weak, but enough to dry their clothes and warm stiff fingers. They spoke little. When they did, it was practical. "Angle that brace more. Careful there. The ground's soft." At one point, Lydia lost her grip on a nail. Her fingers fumbled, pain flashing across her face before she could hide it. Ethan noticed. "Let me," he said. She hesitated, then stepped aside. He worked one-handed, jaw tight, refusing to complain. She watched the way he adjusted his stance to protect his injured arm, the way he didn't rush, didn't curse when it hurt. It reminded her too much of someone else. "Why did you really leave?" she asked suddenly. The hammer paused mid-swing. Ethan set it down carefully, "Because I didn't know how to stay without making things worse." That didn't answer the question. He exhaled slowly. "I thought if I stayed I'd start pretending, acting like I had a right to help you grieve. Like I belonged here, and I didn't trust myself not to cross lines that shouldn't be crossed." Her throat tightened. "You think I would have let you? I think grief makes people reach for whatever keeps them breathing." She said nothing. Neither did he. By midday, the sound of wagon wheels reached them from the south road. Lydia stiffened. "Town," she said quietly. A supply wagon rolled into view, pulled by a tired mule. At its reins sat Mrs. Calder, the grocer's wife, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued. Her gaze moved from the shelter to Ethan, then back to Lydia. "Well," she called, voice light but edged, "looks like you've been busy." Lydia wiped her hands on her skirt. "Morning." Mrs. Calder's eyes lingered on Ethan's bound arm. "Didn't know you had help these days." Ethan stepped forward. "I was passing through." "Of course you were." The silence stretched thin. Mrs. Calder sniffed and flicked the reins. "Storm did a number on the road. Best of luck to you." The wagon creaked away. Lydia's shoulders sagged once it was gone. "That's how it starts," she said. "Looks. Whispers." "I know," Ethan replied. "I won't make you bear that." She turned to him, eyes sharp. "You think leaving makes it easier?" "No," he said honestly. "But staying might make it harder." Her hands clenched. "I'm tired of everything being harder." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Ethan nodded slowly. "So am I." That evening, they sat near the small fire pit, eating the last of Ethan's dried meat and hard bread. The sky blushed pink, then deepened toward violet. "I can't keep living like this," Lydia said softly, staring into the flames. "Waiting for things to collapse, waiting for people to decide what I deserve. You shouldn't have to." She laughed quietly. "Out here should doesn't count for much." Ethan watched her. The way firelight softened the sharp lines grief had carved into her face. "There's work north of here," he said carefully. "Freight runs. Timber camps. I could send word. Supplies. Lumber. Maybe even help you get this place standing proper." She looked at him, wary. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. "Because I don't want to disappear again," he said finally. "And because helping you live feels like the only thing that makes sense anymore." The fire popped. She nodded once. "I won't promise anything." "I'm not asking." The next morning, Ethan saddled his horse. The air was crisp, clean. The land looked almost gentle now, as if the storm had been a dream. Lydia stood nearby, hands folded into the shawl. "I'll be back in a few weeks," he said. "With boards. Tools. Maybe news of work." She swallowed. "If you come back, do it because you choose to. Not because you think you owe me." He met her gaze. "I will." He swung into the saddle, paused. "Lydia? Yes? You don't have to be strong all the time." She didn't answer. But she didn't look away either. He rode off slowly, not taking the long hidden route this time. She watched until he disappeared beyond the rise. That night, alone beneath the shelter, Lydia slept deeper than she had since her husband's death. Not because the pain was gone, but because for the first time it felt shared. The days after Ethan rode north passed slowly, each one measured by wind, light, and the quiet labor of survival. Lydia kept busy. She split kindling from what sound wood remained, patched gaps in the shelter, and dug a deeper fire pit lined with stone. The work steadied her hands, gave her thoughts somewhere to land when memories threatened to pull her under. At night, she wrapped herself in the shawl and listened to the land. The prairie spoke differently now. Not kinder, just honest. On the fourth morning after Ethan left, hoofbeats came from the west. Lydia stiffened, heart jumping before she could stop it. But it wasn't Ethan. It was Sheriff Cole Turner, riding a chestnut gelding dusted gray from travel. He slowed when he saw the shelter, eyes narrowing with open curiosity. "Mornin', Mrs. Hale," he called. She stood straight. "Sheriff." He dismounted, hat tipped back, gaze sweeping the shelter, the stacked boards, the trench. "Looks like you've had help." She didn't answer right away. Silence had become her shield. "Town's been talking," he went on. "Figured I should hear it from you instead of everyone else. People always talk." "Yes," he agreed mildly. "But sometimes they start believing themselves." She met his eyes. "Is that why you're here?" Turner studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. "No. I came because a freight driver said he saw Roe pass through heading north. Folks are putting stories together." Lydia's jaw tightened. "I won't arrest a man for fixing a roof," Turner added. "But I won't stop trouble either, if it comes." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that wears smiles and calls itself concern." He mounted again, tipped his hat. "Be careful." As he rode off, Lydia's stomach twisted. 2 days later, trouble arrived wearing church clothes. A wagon rolled in mid-morning, carrying Mrs. Dalloway, the preacher's wife, and Hank Wilkes, who owned half the cattle east of town and none of the kindness. "We came to check on you," Mrs. Dalloway said, stepping down stiffly. "After the storm." Lydia nodded. "I'm alive." "Yes, well," Hank drawled, eyes flicking to the shelter. "Some folks worry you're living beyond your means. Some folks should mind their own land." Mrs. Dalloway pursed her lips. "There are expectations. A widow living alone, accepting help from a man passing through," Lydia cut in. Hank smiled thinly. "Funny thing about passing men, they always leave something behind." Heat rose sharp in Lydia's chest. "If you've come to shame me, you're wasting your breath." "We came to offer alternatives," Mrs. Dalloway said quickly. "A place in town. Work in the laundry. Proper supervision." Lydia laughed, short, humorless. "You want me where you can watch me. We want you respectable." "I was respectable when my husband was alive," Lydia said. "And I didn't stop being so when he died." Hank's smile vanished. "Careful." She met his stare. "Or what?" The silence stretched. Finally, they left, neither satisfied nor defeated. Just warned. That night, Lydia couldn't sleep. The wind had picked up again, not violent, but restless. It rattled the tarp softly, like fingers tapping glass. She sat by the fire, shawl wrapped tight, and wondered how long a woman could stand alone before the world decided she wasn't allowed to anymore. She thought of Ethan, not as a savior. As a choice. Ethan returned sooner than promised. He rode in at dusk 3 days later, horse-laden with supplies, planks strapped tight, a coil of rope, a sack of grain. Relief hit Lydia so hard it stole her breath. He dismounted, eyes scanning her face first, the shelter second. "You're all right," he said. "So are you." He smiled faintly. They unloaded together. As darkness settled, she told him everything. The sheriff, the visitors, the offers that weren't offers at all. Ethan listened, jaw tightening. "I won't let them corner you," he said. She looked at him sharply. "That's not your decision." "No," he agreed. "But standing beside you is." They sat by the fire, closer than before. "People will say worse now," she said quietly. "I know." "Why are you still here?" she asked. "Truly." Ethan stared into the flames, because every mile away from this place felt like running, and every mile back felt like choosing. Her breath caught. Outside, the wind whispered through the grass. The confrontation came at sunrise. Hank Wilkes returned, this time with 2 riders and a folded paper. "Sheriff's order," Hank said, waving it. "Vacate the property. Back taxes. Improper dwelling." Lydia read it once. Then again. Ethan stepped forward. "This land was paid for by a dead man," Hank replied. Ethan's voice went cold. "Watch your mouth." Lydia lifted her chin. "You want me gone, because I don't fit where you want me." Hank shrugged. "I want order." Ethan took Lydia's hand. The gesture was simple. It changed everything. "Then you'll have to make room for us both," Ethan said. The riders shifted uneasily. Hank sneered. "Town won't stand for this." "Then town can look at us and decide," Lydia said. Together, for the first time, Hank hesitated. By noon, half the town had gathered. Whispers rippled. Stares burned. Lydia stood firm. Ethan didn't let go. Sheriff Turner arrived last, took the paper, read it carefully. "This order's flawed," he said at last. "Land's legal. Dwelling's rough but lawful." Hank flushed. "You're siding with them?" "I'm siding with truth," Turner replied. The crowd murmured. Some turned away. Some stayed. When it ended, nothing was magically fixed. But the worst had passed. That evening, Lydia and Ethan stood beneath the shelter, watching the sun dip low. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I wanted to." She turned to him. "This won't be easy." "I'm not looking for easy." She reached for his hand this time. "I don't know what comes next." Ethan squeezed gently. "Neither do I. But I'd like to find out with you." She nodded. "Not a promise. A beginning." If this chapter stirred your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. At US Wild West Love Stories, we tell powerful frontier romances where courage, love, and resilience shape the untamed West. New cinematic stories every week. Subscribe now and ride on with us. Would you like me to help you brainstorm a title for this story, or perhaps provide a summary for the next chapter?